It's like, it'll be like a roller coaster. It'll be like a roller coaster. All right, so I'm going to put this. You know what I meant? Do you have another pen? I'm going to go get another pen if I need to. I don't like the way this one looks. And I can go right and get one. I meant to do that. Yeah, that's much better. Can I use it for a little bit? All right, I'll put this over here. Thank you. That's the one I literally had to hook up. All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right, Angie Grant. All right. So we're going to look at the camera here first, and here we go. Hey guys, Brian Hilliard here, and I am with Angie Grant of Wild Tree, and I am real excited because she's been here in direct sales for a while, has done some really, really good work, reached some leadership positions, and you know, one of the things that we always try to kind of start off with people is to tell us a little bit about your story. You know, tell us a little bit about how you got started. There's a lot of people who maybe have looked at direct sales, they're in it right now, and they're trying to figure out, boy, I could never be like, you know, Angie. She's gotten all these people working with her, but tell us a little bit about how you got started in this whole direct sales business.
I was introduced to direct sales back in 1999.
Okay.
And it really intrigued me.
Okay.
I was already working, and I was looking for another stream of income.
Okay.
And so I got with the ladies that I had met, and I asked them to tell me about the business.
Okay.
I like the fact that I was able to work from home.
Good.
And make extra money.
Right.
And do it on my time.
Right.
That I didn't have to go and punch another clock.
Right, right.
And the fact that I could make more money in a shorter time of period as long as I worked my job than I could if I was actually going.
Right.
That was very, very appealing to me. Wild Tree, I started it 7.5 years ago.
Okay.
And at the time I was looking for a change.
Okay.
I was looking for a company that I was in love with.
Okay.
And I knew that I loved the products.
Right.
I'd been using them for several years before that.
Okay.
And it was what I love to do. I love to cook. I love to be able to help people. And I like the fact that we're based on the principle that you can have quick, easy, but still healthy meals. And I like the pay scale with it.
Well, you know, it's funny because a lot of people, and we've done interviews before, I've done interviews and Deb's done interviews, there's a lot of people who say that type of thing. You know, they had a corporate, or I don't know if you said corporate, but they had a previous job, that for whatever reason wasn't working for them, for whatever reason, doesn't matter. And then they came to an opportunity. And, you know, here's the thing, and you tell me, just a question. Was this the first opportunity that you saw? Was it the first one that you, like, so the company you're with now, was that the first one that you wound up going with?
No.
Yeah, see, a lot of people don't know that. Talk to us about that.
Actually, I started with one company. And after working it for a couple of years, I decided that it was not a good fit for me.
For whatever reason.
And then in the meantime, I'd actually been introduced to another company.
Okay.
And it had to deal with cooking too.
Right.
Loved that, and I did it. I actually went up into management with that company.
Okay.
And then I lost my passion for it.
Okay.
And so I was very passionate about the Wild Tree.
Right.
So after doing the others in 2008, I started with Wild Tree.
Right.
And there's no turning back now.
Well, you know, it's funny because a lot of times you talk about, Angie, your passion, and I think there's a lot of people who are listening and watching or whatever, and the passion is such a big part, right? And I know that people ask me personally, they say, how is it that you're able to get people, you know, for me, obviously, I don't have a direct sales team, right? I do a lot of coaching and consulting and things like that, but what they ask me is, how can I translate, Brian, what you do with getting clients and things like that into helping me with my team? And one of the things I tell them is, if you show people that you have energy, and if you show that you have a passion for your thing, whatever your thing it may be, I mean, has that been in your experience? Have you seen people being, you know, attracted to just your passion and energy for the business?
Yes, they have. You know, when you love something, you believe in something, people are going to see that. And, they want what you've got.
Right.
And so, it's like, oh my gosh, let me check this out.
Right.
Let me see what, she seems really happy.
Right.
I know that she's making money with it.
Right, right.
I want that.
Right.
And so, if you don't love what you do,
right,
people can actually see that.
That's
and
exactly
so they're
right.
not as attracted to it. And they're like, well, I don't know if I want to do that. But the one thing, the key things is you have to believe in your product, you have to love it, and you have to want to share it.
Interesting. And this is actually probably going to go into one of the questions that we have here is the nuggets of wisdom, right? So you've been doing this since, for a while actually. We'll say 08 in this particular one, but longer than that.
Right.
And what are so one of the things I've heard in terms of nuggets of wisdom would be having passion, which I totally get that, and I totally agree with. If you want to expand on that, that's fine. But what else have you, what else are some nuggets of wisdom you think that you've picked up over the years that maybe people would want to hear about?
First and foremost, you never want to prejudge anyone.
Isn't that interesting? Deb talks about that all the time. What's your okay, fine. What's your take on that?
Because you never know what goes on behind closed doors. You don't know if you have the opportunity that they've been praying for, that, behind closed doors, they may need the extra money. They may be wondering where they're going to get that extra $200 a month to pay for whatever with their kids,
right,
or, they've overextended themselves.
Right.
And so you need to offer what you've got to everyone, because who are you to stand in the way of what they're searching for?
Right.
And that's my biggest thing. And another thing is never take the word no personally.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that before.
Yeah. Because when they're telling you no,
right,
they're saying no to what you have to offer,
right,
not to you personally.
Right.
And just because they say no today does not mean that it's no forever, because
right,
you never know when people's situations change.
Right. Deb talks about this a lot. She says that as a woman, there's a tendency to, like you just said, there's a tendency to kind of over-personalize it and feel like, and there's a lot of ladies listening, obviously, in direct sales. If I would throw out a number, 80%, I'm just throwing out a number, listening to direct sales. And, it's a definite challenge. How do you take the emotion out of that? Because what you just said was a great point, and I think a lot of people will take some value out of that. As a woman, how do you take the emotion out of when somebody says no, or whatever, if you want to say no, or how do you take that and deal with that? What do you do?
Actually, at first, when I first started in direct sales, that was one of the hardest things for me, because I did take it personally.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, the first few times I was told no, I went home and cried.
Ooh.
And
not good.
Not good. But the one thing I did was I got on the phone to my leader.
Okay.
And I talked to my leader, and she says, just make sure that when they tell you no, that it's not you personally.
Right.
And so you sit back, you just take a deep breath, and
right.
You know what? No, it's not for them right now.
Right.
And if now, to the point where if you tell me no, I will ask you, is it just not the right time for you? Do you have any interest at all? And, could we come back and revisit it 3, 6,
right,
9 months from now?
That's great advice.
So, and, if they tell me yes to that, then they're giving me permission to come back to them again.
What a great point, Angie, because you know what I saw? One of the people talks about the idea of talking about no and rejection. They talk about the idea that when you have, if they say no, sometimes it can be not right now. And sometimes it's no, and sometimes it's not right now. A friend of mine says this. He says, what does he say? Oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being I'm really super excited, sign me up, here's my checkbook, and 1 being never talk to me again, where do you find this to be whatever? And most people, I guess, I haven't used it, but he likes it. Most people say, I guess, like a 7, 8. And here's the question. He doesn't make a difference with the numbers. He says, what would it take to get you to a 10? And you're like, oh, okay. Well, in your case, it would be, well, let me talk, wait a couple months to see how things are going. Let me, I don't know what comes up, but people are usually a lot more open to having that discussion than maybe we think.
They are, and one of the things working with a business coach, sometimes that no has to do with their personality.
Okay.
Because you've got your 4 quadrants of your personalities.
Yeah.
And that no is sometimes those C's and those S's,
right,
where they need more information,
right,
they need to analyze it,
right,
and things like that.
right.
So that's another key thing, is you need to know your personality types and
Right.
where you are, so
Right.
that you can work with all 4 quadrants.
That's awesome. She's talking about Myers-Briggs, by the way. You've got your D, your I, your S, and your C. D is dominant, I is influencer, S is supporter, if I'm not mistaken, and C is cautious. And there's different types of people that you have to work with. But that, I mean, we kind of dropped a little knowledge on the recruiting side, by the way, here, because that's what you're getting into, right? You can say it can be no to the product, it can be no to, you know, the person getting you onto the team. And talk to us a little bit about the personality, just for a second. I mean, we don't need to get into a psychology class, but talk to us a little bit about how you, specifically from recruiting, if you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about personalities and how maybe when you see somebody, you know, you said that you were a DI, I think you said, I'm an ID. Talk to us a little, first tell us what that means, and then talk to us a little bit about how you go about using that, if you don't mind, because that's good stuff.
I am a very high D,
Okay.
but I'm also a very high I.
Right.
And so that I want to be in control.
Right.
I want it done this way and everything.
Right.
So I have to slow down
Okay.
when I'm working with a C
Okay.
or an S.
Okay.
I have to slow down, because sometimes I get so excited then too that I'm pouring too much information and
Right.
I'm overloading those other two.
Right.
And so I go back and I'll start asking them questions.
Okay.
You know, what do you need to know? What information do you need?
Right.
And I need to be prepared for that if I don't already know what type of personality they are, so I can bring more information to the table.
Right. Talk about the C's and the S's now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And give them the opportunity to go home and think it over.
Right.
Your C's and your S's are typically not going to be ones that sign with you on the spot.
Right.
Whereas your D's, like I am,
Right.
the D's are, okay, cut through all of this.
Right. Right.
Show me, you know, the nuts and bolts of it.
Right. Again.
And that's one thing, you just have to be able to let them go back though,
Mhm.
analyze it,
Mhm.
talk it over,
Mhm.
and then follow up with them.
I forgot who I was talking with about this, but they made the point that, you know, obviously follow-up is a big thing for a lot of people. They missed the boat on that. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But they talk about the idea that if you're going to go out there and if you don't get a decision right there on the spot, you know, we're still talking recruiting, if you don't get a decision right there on the spot, that ask for permission, back to your point, but she said it a little bit differently. She said ask for permission can I call you back like in a couple of days or something like that? I know what I've personally said in my own business is I'll say, well, that's not a problem if you want to take it. This is actually, I got this from Brian Tracy, Psychology of Sales. He said, if somebody says no or there's kind of not a yes, he says, not a problem. If you don't mind me asking, was it the money? And he says, you don't even was it the money? And they say no. Oh, and they will volunteer the reason for what it is. And, you know, so when somebody, getting back to your point, if you have like a cautious person, and you can tell a cautious person just by the way they talk about in terms of, I need to think it over. They'll say things like, I never make a decision this quick. As opposed to with D, you'll tell where they're more up-tempo to begin with. You know, they will be more bottom line oriented and things like that. I totally agree. And when you are seeing this in the field as a recruiter for your team, what I think you're saying is be aware of what it is that you are. Be aware of what it is that's going on with that other person. And if it's an S and a C, let that go in terms of following up. Get permission to ask later, talk to them later. But then also, you know, and then for the I's and the D's, make sure, probably conversely, you want to make sure you have bottom line stuff for them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Make sure that they're good to go. That's good. That's good stuff. All right. What I want to talk about here is, one of the questions we have is for people who are doing this part-time, all right, and want to earn a living doing a full-time. Now, obviously, you're doing this full-time,
Yes.
which is obvious. For people who are, you know, part-time and they want to do it full-time, what would be something that you would tell them? You know, is there maybe 2 or 3? So I'm working in corporate America and I'm trying to you know, I'm trying to be like Angie Grant. I'm trying to get out there. I want to be in this organization. I want to have 100 people under me. I'm going to have this organization. What's 2 or 3 things that you would tell them?
First of all, they need to remember that the hours are flexible. They're not optional.
Wow.
So,
you realize Deb said that exact same thing? That's awesome. Deb's going to like her, by the way. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The next thing I do with my reps is I have them get their calendars out.
Uh-huh.
And I have them put everything in there that has to do with their family and their personal life. And then we look at their calendar and see where they can fit it in. So if you're wanting to go from part-time to full-time, you know, that means you're going to have to step it up. Part-time, you're probably only doing maybe 2 to 4 shows a month.
Okay.
Full-time, you're doing about 8 shows a month. So it's 2 shows a week. And you, and we also want to have them looking more in depth at recruiting when they're at their parties too, because obviously if you're doing more parties, you're in front of more people, and so it's quicker to build your team from your parties, and that builds your income quicker too.
Okay, so let me stop you there for a second. If I heard you correctly, part-time, you're looking at it for business more so than you are on the recruiting side. I mean, it's not like you're not.
Right.
But when you're on a full-time, you're looking at it almost as a 2-for-1. You're looking at it as, I've got one party, and I need to obviously, you know, I'm going to get business from the party, obviously.
Right.
But I also have to have this recruiting component that I may not have had to have, you know, earlier in my career.
Correct.
Okay, that's a great point.
So,
That's it? Okay, that's your 2. That's it. That's good. That's fun. All right. So then the 2 points are being able to engage people, being able to look in terms of the recruiting, right, a little bit more, and then also be a little bit more proactive with your calendars and things like that. Because that's the other point I guess you brought up, which is you got to make sure that you fit it all in. You know, how do you do that? How do you fit stuff in?
I mean, every month I look at my calendar and I put in my pertinent things. My networking, because networking is a very key component to my business.
Right.
And then my personal life and any appointments that I have.
You have kids, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I have 2 furry ones.
Okay, that's fine. I have a dog too. That's fine. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe that might have been a great question. All right. Go ahead.
But no, and then... But I do have an elderly grandmother that I do have to help.
The point I was trying to make was that there was personal things that were going on. I might not have done that.
Because I am a leader in the company, I have to schedule time for my team for their training.
Right.
And then I have my personal business, because you have to keep a balanced business.
Right.
And so, you know, right now I'm currently doing about 10 to 12 shows a month.
Okay.
And I only do those usually through the week. I don't really like to work on the weekends.
That's your prerogative.
No, yes, and that's one of the best parts is I choose when I work.
That's right.
And then I schedule a couple of nights or daytime for my team for their trainings.
Interesting. And let me stop you there, because one of the things that I've heard a lot from direct sales folks is they say, I've got this. This is one of the biggest mistakes I personally see. I'm trying to build my business, Brian, and I've got a half a dozen people, right? And that's fine. They've got a half a dozen. That's great. And they say, but I feel like I have to kind of pull it out of my team. I feel like I got to talk to them all the time. I feel like I have to, essentially, like I took on a part-time job, and these people are supposed to be helping me. I thought it was the other way around, you know? And what I think I hear you saying is you dedicate time specifically for the team. A lot of times I see people make the mistake of trying to be almost too available for their team. I mean, what's your thought on that?
You know, if I match my time with their time.
I love that.
And if they're not putting forth the effort, then I will only check in every month or a couple of months.
That's exactly right.
Now, my members of my team that are working, if they want to have a training call with me, we set it up. However, I don't call them. I have them call me, because then that shows me that how committed they are.
Yeah, because you can have it where you can have it where you're calling, you know, at 9:15 or whatever the time was, and they're on their way to the airport. or and you know they're you know in number 3 at the Starbucks line. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
So
Yeah, you're right.
they have to be committed to get my time, because obviously working and doing 10 to 12 shows a month takes a lot of my time. And you know, we'll work on it. They have to tell me what's going on, what we need to work through, and then we set goals for the next week. Now they're welcome to text me throughout the week.
Fine.
If they have a major crisis, they can call me, but I am not available all the time. I set parameters. I have certain times that I talk to them.
I love this. It's almost like office hours.
It is. And you need to do that, because you need that for your sanity, for one.
Right.
Or you're going to feel like that.
Right.
You know, are you always available to your customers? No, you need office hours.
Right.
Because you don't want to, you know, be in your office from 8 a.m. till, you know, 10 or 12 at night.
Right.
So.
I love that, because, you know, Angie, a lot of times, especially in this technical world, right, this connected world we live in, you've got your cell phones, you've got your, you know, I just started texting last year, by the way. So that's.
I only started a year and a half ago.
Okay, well then probably we're the only 2 people in the whole country that didn't text 2 years ago, you know, that are sitting down together. And I think that a lot of times people, they're texting, obviously email, the internet, again, obviously. There's this, cell phones already mentioned, there's this always on feeling in this country. I don't know what it's like in other parts of the world. My understanding is it's not like it. But in this country, there's this always on feeling, and I think a lot of direct sales professionals that I see feel like they need to be there for the team. And it's almost like their perception of being there is always on. And you're saying, no, you want to be able to have some different times, we've called them office hours, that you have and that you communicate that these people know about.
Yes. You don't want to be too available.
Right.
It just, because you will begin to feel like you're at their mercy.
Right.
The purpose of being in direct sales is because obviously you want to be your own boss.
Right.
Okay? So why would you let your reps or your customers control your schedule?
Right.
You say, you make your hours, you say, this is when I'm working. They're going to conform to it.
That's it. Or don't, because that's what it is. It's non-negotiable. I love this. This is awesome. Okay, I got a couple more questions, and then we're gonna go. This is something that, you know, people ask me a lot, and it comes up actually in our blog. Deb wrote a post on this. Question is, talking about people joining your team. A lot of people want to talk about recruiting. A lot of people want to have a feel, but what the heck? How do I get what is a good person? You know, when you've got, you know, a lot of people that you've worked with directly. In your personal and also your organization. Give us a point or two. How do you find a good one How do you find somebody who you feel is good for your business and it's going to be a good fit? That's a better term. Versus somebody who you're looking at and maybe is not. I mean, I'll tell you what Deb says, and I know from my personal experience, I know you can't judge a book by its cover.
That's true. And you have to remember, I always compare my recruiting to a deck of cards.
Interesting.
Because there are 52 cards in there.
Okay.
There's only 4 aces.
Interesting.
Okay? And a team...
That's a good point.
Takes the whole makeup of the deck of cards.
Right.
The deck of cards doesn't work without all of them.
Right.
Okay? So, you know, it's okay to have some 2, 3s, and 4s. And those are your people that don't, you know... They're not very consistent. They don't ever work. But you know what? You'll be sitting there, and maybe you're trying to reach a goal, and they're going to throw in a couple $100 order that is coming out of nowhere, and you're going, oh, okay.
A lot of times, that's all it takes.
That's right. Then you've got your peoples that are your 4, 5s, and 6s. They're doing a little bit more, maybe a party a month.
Right.
But you never know either when those are going to change to something else.
I love this.
Because in my first direct sales business, I wasn't sure how big of a business I wanted. I knew I wanted to make some income.
Okay.
But I didn't want to be a leader.
Okay.
But you know what? After a little while, I started seeing the full picture. And I was probably like maybe in that 4, 5, 6 in the deck of cards.
Okay.
And
When you
then
started out.
When I started out.
Okay.
And then when I was that aha moment for me, then all of a sudden, then I became a face card.
Right.
For my leader.
Right, which is a jack, king, queen.
Right.
Gotcha.
And eventually, I was one of those aces.
Right.
So I don't ever discount anybody. They may not be what, I may know that they're not going to be, one of my face cards or one of my aces.
Right.
But I don't know what's going to change because their situation may change.
Right.
3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever.
Right.
So I'll let them on my team, even if they're only going to be a 2, 3, 4.
So what I'm hearing is a couple takeaways. Number one is you want to look for people. You're not looking for necessarily the ace of spades, right? You're trying to get something that is, you're having a degree of, what's the word?
Versatility.
Thank you. With your team, you know what I mean. Okay, so then still though, there's some criteria to get people on, right? Like so you're not taking every Tom, Dick, and Harry.
No.
You told us that you matched their time with your effort and all that other stuff back and forth. You match your effort with their time. Okay, I'm sitting down with you. How do you know? Like, what are you looking for? What are you looking for?
Well, first of all, I want you to tell me what you want.
Okay, good.
You've got an interest in the business.
Right.
Okay, and I can tell you all kinds of things because my interest is trips and money.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
That may just be of no interest to you. You may just be looking to get out of the house away from the kids a few nights a week.
And that's fine.
And so I'm like, okay, Brian, you tell me what you want to know from the about the company.
Right off the bat, what you are not doing, this is important, right off the bat, what you are not doing is trying to jump through hoops or go through some type of convincing, right? You're right off the bat, you're saying, tell me where or why, probably why, you're sitting down with me right off the bat. That's a good point. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And then we'll just go to the interview, and we have 2 eyes, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Right.
Because a good recruiter listens.
Right.
Okay? And so as you're telling me what you want, then I'm going to take, that from the company and I'm going to show you.
Right.
And I'm going to ask you for questions.
Right.
And, is there anything else? And then at the end of the interview, I'm just going to be, so, are you interested in signing up?
So we're asking for the business.
We're asking for it at the end.
Right.
But
about an hour, 45 minutes?
About 45 minutes is
okay.
usually what it takes.
Okay.
But I want you to tell me and what you're wanting, and that's all I'm going to answer. I'm not going to, in direct sales, we tend to call it throw up on you.
I'm totally with you.
Because when you go back to that personality chart again, some of those, when you start throwing up on them, you're turning them completely off because you're overloading them with information and you've lost them.
Right.
So you always want to make sure that you're listening.
Right.
Telling them what they want to know.
Right.
Being very specific.
Right.
And at the end, so, tell me if you're interested still. And would you like me to show you how to do it?
I love that because what you're looking at, there's also a confidence component, which you didn't mention, but is underlying that whole discussion, which is, again, back to, I guess, my point, a lot of direct sales people, and this isn't just direct sales, entrepreneurs do it anyway, obviously we're talking about direct sales, but a lot of direct sales people feel like they need to convince. And you don't need to do that. You know what I like to ask? One of the very first questions I like to ask when, for like working with me for a coaching or consulting gig or whatever, I'll say, first of all, I thank people for having me, so much, yada, yada, yada. And I say, so tell me, I know you're a busy person, Angie. Tell me a little bit about what made you decide to want to sit with me here today. I mean, it's the same point.
Right.
And they're like, oh, it's because of this, this, and this. And I think a lot of times, to your point again, if we have a body of knowledge that is this, there's a misguided tendency to feel like this is what needs to go, to the person in question. And really, of this, it just might be that. Correct. The problem is we don't know if it's that, or that, which is why we have to ask them the question. I love this. All right, so let's see here. One more question here, and this is my favorite one, which is if you could go back in time. So you've been doing this for a while. If you could go back in time and talk to yourself when you first started out, and doodly-doodly. Someone asked me if I could actually. Of course not. That's ridiculous. No, but if you could, right? If you could go back in time and talk to yourself, you know, somehow you wind up 8 years ago or whatever, what would you tell yourself that you know now that you didn't know then?
One of the things is always make sure that you are inviting. Okay.
Okay.
So many times in direct sales, we tend to tell you that we never invite.
Okay, talk to me about that because I'm not sure I understand it exactly.
Okay. So, you know, I hear from my representatives all the time that, you know what, well, I told so-and-so all about the products, this and this.
Oh,
and
I'm
this.
with you.
And
I'm with
like,
you. Okay.
So did you invite them
Or not.
or not
Right.
to have a party? And they're
Right.
like, well, I told them about it, so they know I do it. And I'm like,
Nah.
you can't do that.
No.
You need to actually say, hey, Brian,
Right.
you know, I've got this really great line.
Right.
Would you be interested in letting me come to your home with some
Right.
of your friends
Right.
and do a tasting for you?
Right. I love
and
that.
That's one of the biggest things I think we do wrong in direct sales.
Okay.
Is we don't invite. We don't invite them to join our team.
Interesting.
We don't invite them to have a party.
Right.
And then the biggest thing for me was prejudging.
Yeah.
And sometimes there was like a couple of people on my team that I would have never asked them because
For whatever reason.
for whatever
Yeah.
reason, and you know what? They ended up on my team, and they ended up being one of my best reps.
Right, the ace of
Yeah.
hearts, the queen of diamonds, right.
So,
Going back to
I mean,
the
those are
analogy.
the two biggest things: is always invite
Mhm.
and never prejudge.
And I could tell, you know, people listening and watching now, probably one of the things that they have had is, and you talked about this earlier, it's the confidence to do that. I think a lot of times people, this is my opinion, I think a lot of times people don't have the confidence to ask for the business. We talked about that. And they don't, because they don't ask for the business, they get into this kind of prejudging. The conversation is, let me try to find someone who I know is not going to say no.
Right. But you know, this is what I do with my reps. We have a contest,
Mm.
and it's how many no's can you get?
Right.
Because every no that you get, you're
Right.
you're just one no closer to getting that yes.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you know, a lot of times people, they don't understand that it's you know, you talk about sales as a contact sport. You know what I mean? And you need to be able to engage these people. You need to talk to them and get them feeling good about the process. So this is awesome. Angie, this was good stuff. I really appreciate it. This was really, really good. All right, well, that is Angie Grant. My name is Brian Hilliard saying so long, take care, and thank you for your time. Okay.
So how was it?
That was excellent. See that?